Well, good day. This is the Thesaurus feature of Microsoft Word, and what the Thesaurus does is it tries to find you words that are similar to the words you're using. For instance, you might say, we drove through the dark night, and you think, well, that's not a very interesting sentence. Maybe I'll try to spice it up somehow. Maybe it wasn't a dark night, I'll change the word dark. And what you can do is just give it a right click and choose synonyms. And it says, we drove through the dim night. We drove through the shady night. Maybe we drove through the murky night. Maybe we drove through the gloomy night, or the sinister night, or the mysterious night. And so I can choose one of these synonyms. Maybe I'll just choose gloomy. It says we drove through the gloomy night. Now I think, well, that's a little bit better. But I hardly ever use the thesaurus because when you start using the thesaurus, you often choose words that don't really fit very well with what you're doing. There's a famous writer who had a quote about the thesaurus, and I've never forgotten this when I learned it as a teenager. It's by Stephen King. He's a very famous author. He's written many books, and a lot of them have been made into movies. He usually writes horror books. I've never read a single book by Stephen King, but I know he's very famous, and he knows how to write. And his quote was this: any word you have to hunt for in a thesaurus is the wrong word. He goes on to say there are no exceptions to this rule. And I've always remembered that. If you have to find a good word in a thesaurus, you're probably going to end up with the wrong word. So I try not to use the thesaurus. This one says Fred threw a stone into the lake. And maybe it wasn't really a lake. I'll give it a right click and it says what are the synonyms? Maybe he threw it into a pond or a lagoon or just threw it into water. Maybe I'll choose pond. This third sentence says the sad girl sat quietly on the steps. And maybe it wasn't a sad girl. Maybe I want to try to use the thesaurus. Now you could right click and use a synonym, and this is a quick way to find a synonym. Maybe it wasn't a sad girl. Maybe it was a depressing girl, or a gloomy girl, or a miserable girl. Instead of choosing one of the synonyms, I'm going to go use the thesaurus directly. And that's under the Review tab. And under Review it says Thesaurus. So you're on a word, you choose Thesaurus, and you might notice right away there's a shortcut to that. You could have done Shift F7 to get to the Thesaurus very quickly. Shift F7 is the shortcut key. And it goes to sad and it says the same synonym words that I had before. And this girl who's sitting quietly on the steps, maybe she's not really a sad girl. Maybe you can rewrite the sentence and say, the girl sat forlornly on the steps. Now, do you know what forlornly means? It's not a word that's going to be found in the thesaurus. Forlornly is the way a person would sit if they were like an orphan sitting on the steps and they're miserable. Let's look at the synonyms they have for forlornly. It means pitifully or dejectedly or despondently. She's just hopeless. She's very unhappy, or she's just desperate. That's what forlornly means. And you're not going to find that in the thesaurus. And that's why I don't use the thesaurus very often. When you try to start changing words around, pretty soon you just start picking words that just don't fit very well. You could say, the cheerless girl sat quietly. Well, maybe it wasn't really quietly. Maybe she sat in silence. The cheerless girl sat in silence on the steps. And this just sounds like, it just doesn't sound right. It sounds like you've just made a synonym sentence. Because you couldn't think of the right word, so you just picked a thesaurus sentence. The last one I want to do is this one that says ran. Now this is in the past tense. It's not run, it's ran. So if I do the thesaurus, it'll say, hey, I don't know that word at all. I never heard of this word, ran. What do you mean, ran? And it says, well, I do know the word run, so I give it a click. And it says, if you meant that Opal ran to the barn, did she run because she was happy? Was she anxious? Was she terrified? Why did she run? And if I say, well, maybe she just scampered off. And that means she was kind of happy, and she's just going to run off to the barn because there's something going on over there. Maybe she scurried off to the barn. Scurry sort of gives the impression that she was anxious or she was excited. Maybe there's something fun in the barn and she's going to scurry off to the barn. Maybe she's going to play with a horse. She scurries off to the barn. Ran could mean like a river. A river runs. A river can trickle. A river can flow. So there's a different word for ran. Or maybe the word ran means like our school. You could say our school runs from August to May. It runs, it proceeds, it happens along. So there's lots of different words for run. So maybe Opal was happy. She's going to scamper off to the barn. I will click this little drop down. I will insert that word. And I'll have to add the ed myself. Scampered. She scampered off to the barn. Well, I don't use the thesaurus very much because of what I learned from Stephen King. He said if you don't have the education to use the right word in the first place, the thesaurus is probably not going to help you. Well, that's about all there is to it.